It had been almost 6 years since I last spoke to my brother, Ethan. 6 long years since we stood side by side at our parents' funeral. And even then, there had been miles of silence between us. So, when I saw his name flash across my phone screen, I thought it was a mistake. Dinner this Saturday. The whole family's getting together. You should come, his message read. Just like that. No greeting, no emotion, no mention of the past. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen as memories flooded in. Childhood laughter, our mother's warm kitchen, the sound of our father's voice, and then the cold silence that had replaced it all. I showed the message to my daughter, Lily. She was only 10, but she carried a heart that felt older. "Are we going, Mom?" she asked softly, hope lighting her eyes. I smiled. "Maybe it's time," I said, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, her or myself. The following days, I found myself rummaging through my closet, wondering what to wear. Everything felt too plain, too me. Ethan's family lived in another world, the kind of world where dinner meant wine lists, longer than my rent receipts. Still, I told myself, family is family. When Saturday came, I pressed Lily's hair into neat curls and buttoned her yellow dress. She looked like sunshine, innocent, kind, untouched by bitterness. "Ready?" I asked. She nodded, clutching my hand as we stepped into the old car. The restaurant was one of those glass and gold places where even the valet looked expensive. My chest tightened as we walked in. I saw them immediately. Ethan, his perfectly dressed wife Samantha, and their teenage son, Noah, scrolling on his phone, wearing a jacket that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Ethan's eyes met mine across the table. He smiled, polite and hollow. "Clara, you made it," he said, as if I were a distant acquaintance, not his sister. I tried to smile back. "Of course. It's been too long." Samantha's eyes scanned me from head to toe, a flicker of disapproval, masked by a practiced smile. "Well, isn't this sweet?" she said. "You brought your little girl." Lily smiled shyly. "Hi, Aunt Samantha." Samantha just nodded, already turning back to her wine glass. I told myself not to take it personally. Maybe I was just overthinking. Maybe this dinner really was a chance to start over. But deep down, something told me it wasn't. The restaurant smelled like truffle oil and old money. Crystal chandeliers hung above us like frozen tears, reflecting the golden light onto white linen tables. Every fork, every glass shimmered in perfect order, as if the place had never seen a single mistake. I could feel my heart beating louder than the violin music playing in the background. Ethan stood to greet me, his hand resting on Samantha's shoulder, like a prop for a portrait. He had changed so much. The boy who used to steal cookies with me from Mum's kitchen now looked like he belonged on a magazine cover for Men Who Win. "Come on, sit down," he said. "We already ordered drinks." I nodded, guiding Lily to her seat beside me. The table stretched long, at least 10 people. Ethan's business partners were there, laughing, their wives whispering behind designer purses. Everyone looked perfect, except me. Samantha leaned forward, resting her chin on her manicured hand. "So, Clara," she began, "how's life? In your part of town?" "My part of town." The words hung like a sour note. I forced a smile. "We're doing well. I've been working at the bakery downtown. Lily just started 5th grade." "Oh," Samantha said, her brows lifting ever so slightly. "That's cute." Laughter fluttered faintly around the table, light but cutting. I felt my stomach tighten. Lily glanced up at me, confused, her little hands gripping the napkin on her lap. Ethan jumped in, but not to defend me. "Well, not everyone's cut out for business, right, Clara?" He laughed, sipping his wine. "You were always more of the creative one." It sounded like an insult, disguised as nostalgia. I looked around at their plates. Pristine, empty, waiting. The waiter appeared beside Ethan, his posture stiff, his tone reverent. "Are we ready to order, sir?" Ethan nodded. "Let's start. I'll have the Wagyu ribeye, rare. Samantha, your usual." She smiled. "The lobster risotto, of course." Their son Noah barely looked up from his phone. "I'll take the tomahawk steak," he mumbled. "That's the $200 one, right?" Ethan said proudly to the waiter. "Get him the best one. He deserves it." Then came my turn. The waiter's polite eyes turned to me. "And for you, ma'am." Before I could open my mouth, Samantha interjected. "Oh, Clara's not picky," she said, laughing lightly. "Maybe just something simple." "I'll have the grilled chicken," I said, steady but quiet. Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Can I get the kids pasta, Mama?" Samantha turned to the waiter again, waving a delicate hand. "Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't order for your daughter," she said with a sugary smile. The reservation was for 8, not 9. The table went silent. The air cracked. Invisible but sharp. Ethan chuckled awkwardly, glancing at Samantha. "Honey, that's not..." But he didn't finish. He just took another sip of wine. Lily's face fell. Her lips trembled, and I felt her little hand tighten around mine. "It's okay," I whispered to her. "We'll share mine." But my voice, it cracked a little. Across the table, Noah smirked and sank his knife into the $200 steak that had just been set before him. The smell filled the air. Rich, buttery, almost mocking. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I told myself not to make a scene, not in front of Lily, not in front of them. I smiled weakly. "No problem," I said. "She's not that hungry anyway." It was a lie. She hadn't eaten since lunch. Samantha nodded sweetly. "Good. Children shouldn't get used to expensive tastes." Her words landed harder than she knew. Maybe she meant them to. I sat through that dinner, pretending the food didn't taste like ashes in my mouth. Every laugh, every toast, every bite from across that table felt like a reminder of where I stood in their eyes. By the time dessert came, I could barely breathe. So I stood, placing my napkin gently on the table. "Thank you for dinner," I said softly. "But we should go. It's getting late." Samantha barely looked up. Ethan said something about leaving so soon, but didn't stop me. I walked out of that glittering restaurant hand in hand with my daughter, her small fingers gripping mine like an anchor in a storm. She looked up at me as the cool night air hit our faces. "Mommy," she whispered, "did we do something wrong?" My throat tightened. "No, baby," I said. "We just went to the wrong table." That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of forks against plates kept echoing in my head. Sharp, metallic, merciless. Every laugh from that dinner table replayed like a loop that refused to end. I stood by the kitchen window, long after Lily had fallen asleep, her soft breathing steady in the next room. The city outside was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept seeing Samantha's face, that perfect polished smile that hid the rot underneath. I kept seeing Ethan, my own brother, watching it happen, saying nothing. He didn't just let them humiliate me. He let them humiliate my daughter. And that was something I would never forgive. I remember washing the single plate from dinner that night, my hands trembling, as I ran the sponge over the edges. My reflection stared back from the window, tired, angry, small. It wasn't just about the meal. It was about years of being treated like the poor relative, the failure, the unwanted one. They had everything, the money, the company, the perfect family. And I had spent years convincing myself that it didn't matter. That as long as Lily was safe, I didn't need their approval. But that night, sitting there while my little girl watched another child cut into a $200 steak she was told she didn't deserve, something inside me cracked open, and in that crack, a fire started. The next morning, I found Lily sitting at the small kitchen table with her crayons scattered around her. She was drawing a plate of spaghetti. She looked up as I walked in. "I drew us dinner," she said with a smile that was too bright for what she'd been through. "So we don't have to go back there." My heart broke a little more. I hugged her, pressing my lips to her hair. "We'll make our own dinners from now on, okay? The kind no one can take away from us." The following week, I tried to go on as usual. Work, bills, life. But something felt different. Every loaf of bread I baked, every customer I greeted, I felt like I was building something bigger than I could see yet. At the bakery, my boss, Mrs. Keene, noticed the change. "You've got fire in your eyes lately," she said one afternoon. "What happened?" I smiled faintly. "Just a dinner that reminded me of who I am." She chuckled. "Those are the best kind." Days turned into weeks. I heard from relatives that Ethan's family was doing better than ever. Or so they claimed. A new car, another vacation, a house remodel. They lived like royalty. But one night, as I scrolled through local news, something caught my eye. A small headline buried between ads. Ethan Langford's company, under quiet review after financial irregularities. I stared at the article. It wasn't detailed, but it hinted at what I already knew deep down. The life Ethan paraded around might not be as golden as it looked. My fingers tightened around my phone. And for the first time since that dinner, I felt a spark of satisfaction. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lily. But that night, as she slept peacefully in her room, I sat in bed and whispered to myself, "They made me feel small at their table, but one day they'll beg for a seat at mine." The words came out steady, certain, like a promise sealed in blood and quiet rage. The next morning, I took a notebook from the drawer and wrote one word at the top of the first page: plan. Underneath, I scribbled, "Use what I know. Start small. Stay invisible. Never let them see you coming." I closed the book, took a deep breath, and smiled to myself. They thought humiliation was the end of my story, but really, it was just the beginning. The rain fell hard that week, long silver streaks racing down the bakery windows. I remember standing by the counter, watching the storm, as the smell of cinnamon and yeast filled the air. Every clap of thunder reminded me of that night at the restaurant, of Lily's small face, when Samantha told her she wasn't included. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was motivation. I didn't want revenge made of rage. I wanted revenge made of growth. Slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. I wanted to build something that would make them choke on their own arrogance. One afternoon, I was cleaning up the bakery when I overheard a conversation between two regulars sitting by the window. "Did you hear about Langford Holdings?" One whispered. "The real estate firm?" "Yeah. My cousin said they're drowning in debt. They're pretending everything's fine. But word is, their investors are getting nervous. Langford Holdings, Ethan's company." I froze mid-motion, the rag still in my hand. It was like the universe had whispered an opportunity right into my ear. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat at my small dining table with my laptop open and the house lights off. Only the glow of the screen lit my face. I searched every corner of the internet. Old articles, local business listings, financial records. I pieced together the story. Ethan had overextended himself. He'd invested heavily into luxury properties that weren't selling. The market had shifted, and now he was covering losses with loans and bluff. On the outside, he still looked untouchable, but inside, the cracks were spreading. I smiled, because I knew something about cracks. That's where the light gets in. The next morning, I took my notebook, the one that now held my growing list of plans, and wrote a new word on the top of a fresh page: reclaim. It wasn't about stealing or destroying anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine. My mother's recipes, my family's dignity, my daughter's right to sit at any table. I started experimenting in my tiny kitchen after work. Flour, sugar, vanilla, cinnamon. I recreated my mother's old caramel brioche recipe, the one that used to fill our childhood home with warmth, the one Ethan always used to sneak bites of when no one was looking. When it came out of the oven, golden and soft, I took a bite and felt tears sting my eyes. It wasn't just bread, it was memory. It was identity. It was power. I began selling the pastries quietly at the bakery, labeling them Lily's Bites. People loved them more than anything else we sold. A food blogger came in one afternoon, ordered one, took a picture, and posted it with the caption, "This is what home tastes like." By the next week, people were lining up outside the door, asking for them. Mrs. Keene, my boss, looked at me with wide eyes. "Clara, you might be onto something," I smiled. "I think so." Within a month, the demand grew beyond what the bakery could handle. I rented a small stall at the weekend market. Just a folding table and a handwritten sign that read, "Lily's Table." People came. Then they came back. And soon, local newspapers picked it up. Single mother turns old family recipes into city's newest food craze. I cut out the article and taped it above my stove. Every time I saw it, I remembered Samantha's words. Children shouldn't get used to expensive tastes. Now, people were lining up and paying premium for the very recipes she would have turned her nose up at. But beneath the excitement, I stayed quiet, focused, patient. I didn't need to brag. I didn't need to tell anyone what I was building, because one day, it would be impossible for them not to notice. One Friday night, after closing up the stall, I saw Lily asleep in the passenger seat of our car, a cookie still in her hand. I sat for a while, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The pain from that dinner was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't humiliation anymore. It was fuel. I whispered to myself as I turned the key in the ignition. They thought I'd stay small, but they just gave me the reason to grow. By spring, the market stall wasn't enough anymore. Every Saturday, I'd sell out before noon. People would line up with smiles, some bringing their children, others taking photos and tagging Lily's Table online. I had to bake through the nights, flour dust clinging to my hair, sugar on my sleeves, and exhaustion sitting heavy behind my eyes. But for the first time, I didn't mind being tired. This kind of tired came with purpose. Mrs. Keene, my boss, found me one morning asleep at the bakery counter. After an all-night bake, she set down a cup of coffee beside me and said softly, "You know, I think it's time you stop baking for other people's dreams, Clara." I blinked at her, confused. She smiled. "Start your own place. You've got the recipes, the story, the heart. Don't waste it under my sign." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, because that sentence, that small, generous sentence, changed everything. That evening, after Lily went to bed, I pulled out my notebook again. On a new page, I wrote, "Goal, open Lily's Table, our own bakery cafe. Deadline, 1 year. Funding, find a way." I drew a small doodle of a door with an open sign on it. It looked silly, childish even, but it was real. And that night, under the dim kitchen light, I whispered a promise. I'm building something that no one can take away from us. Ever again. It wasn't easy. Banks turned me down twice. No collateral. No credit history. Each rejection felt like a slap from the same hand that had humiliated me at that dinner table. But instead of breaking me, it hardened me. I worked extra shifts, took catering gigs on weekends, and started baking for small events. Birthdays, church fairs, charity gatherings. Every customer was a potential investor. Every cupcake, a calling card. And slowly word spread. One morning, a woman with short grey hair and kind eyes stopped by my market stall. She introduced herself as Grace Weller, a retired restaurant owner. "I've been following your story," she said, holding up her phone. "That little feature in City Bites magazine. You have heart, and that's rare." She looked around at the crowd. "You're outgrowing this stall, dear. Ever thought of a storefront?" I laughed nervously. "Every day," she smiled. "I know a space. Small, affordable. Consider it fate. Or maybe the universe finally repaying a debt." A month later, I stood in front of the tiny brick building at the corner of Ashwood and 9th. The windows were dusty. The sign faded, but I could already see it. The warm lights, the smell of vanilla and coffee, the laughter of strangers, becoming friends. Lily tugged my sleeve. "Is this ours?" I knelt beside her. "Not yet, baby, but it will be. We worked day and night." I painted walls. She helped label jars. Friends pitched in. Grace showed up with old cafe chairs and a grin. And when the doors finally opened, Lily's table glowed like a piece of my heart on display. People poured in, not because we were fancy, but because we were real. They could taste love in every bite, feel warmth in every smile, and soon, the little bakery on the corner became something bigger. A name people whispered, a place that felt like home. One day, a young food influencer came by to film. She asked me, "What inspired all this?" I thought for a moment. "Family," I said, "and the way they teach you who you are. Sometimes by loving you, and sometimes by trying to break you." A week later, our story went viral. The video title read, "Single Mom Turns Family Pain into City's Sweetest Success." Within days, I had offers from investors. People wanted franchises. Even reporters started showing up, asking for interviews. And then one morning, I saw something that stopped me cold. A message request on social media from Ethan Langford. "Hey Clara, congratulations on your bakery. Saw the news. Really proud of you." Proud. The same man who had watched my daughter be turned away from his table. Now proud. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I locked my phone, placed it face down on the counter and smiled. Because pride was only the beginning. He had no idea what was coming next. Success didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, like sunlight sneaking through curtains after a long storm. By summer, Lily's table had become the place people came not just to eat, but to feel something. We had regulars who brought friends, strangers who came in for coffee, and left with memories. Every morning, I'd unlock the door to find a line already waiting outside. And every night, after closing, I'd stand alone in the empty cafe, breathing in the sweet scent of vanilla and sugar, whispering, "We did it, Mom. We really did." But even as I built something new, the shadows of the past started moving closer again. It began with a phone call. "Hi, this is Robert Grant from Oakwood Investments," the man said. He spoke with that calm, polished tone that people in business used when they smelled profit. "We've been following Lily's table's growth, and we'd love to discuss potential expansion opportunities." Expansion. The word felt too big for my little cafe, but something inside me knew. This was my next step. We met the following week. Robert turned out to be charming, middle-aged, the kind of man who'd seen both success and failure and learned to hide both well. He told me that Oakwood had supported several boutique restaurants and bakeries across the state. Then, halfway through the meeting, he dropped a name that made my pulse quicken. One of our former partners actually worked with Langford Holdings. Small world, isn't it? Langford Holdings. Ethan's company. I smiled, careful not to show too much. "Yes," I said softly. "Very small." Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and dug deeper into Oakwood's client list. Sure enough, there it was. Langford Holdings, listed as a past client, except past didn't mean gone. It meant disgraced. Rumors had already started circulating online. Missed payments, investor withdrawals, project delays. Ethan's perfect empire was cracking faster than anyone realized. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt balance. The next morning, I sat with Robert at the cafe. We discussed a possible second location, a small downtown spot with more foot traffic. He leaned forward and said, "If we're going to expand, you'll need a reliable partner, someone with financial experience." I smiled. "I'll find one. I have someone in mind." That was a lie, but soon it wouldn't be, because I knew exactly who would come knocking when they realized my name was the one filling headlines, while his sank in scandal. It didn't take long. 2 months later, a familiar black car pulled up outside the cafe just before closing. I was wiping the counter when the doorbell chimed, and there he was, Ethan, my brother. He looked smaller somehow, still wearing an expensive suit, but the sharpness was gone. His eyes had the hollow look of a man holding too many lies. "Clara," he said, forcing a smile. "You look well." I wiped my hands on a towel. "You too. For someone whose company's under investigation." He flinched slightly, but recovered quickly. "You've been keeping up, I see." "I like to stay informed," I said calmly. He glanced around the cafe, his gaze lingering on the walls, the tables, the logo painted by Lily herself. "This place is beautiful," he said. "You've done really well." I crossed my arms. "We did what we had to do." He nodded slowly. "That's actually what I wanted to talk about. Langford Holdings is restructuring. I'm looking for new partners, fresh investors. You've clearly built something successful. Maybe we could—" I couldn't help but laugh. It came out sharp and soft all at once. "Are you serious?" He blinked, confused. I thought maybe. You thought I'd help you," I said, my tone steady. "After what you did to me, to Lily?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Clara, that dinner, God, it was years ago. You're still holding on to that?" I took a step closer. "Do you remember what Samantha said to my daughter that night?" He hesitated. "She was joking. She told a 10-year-old child she wasn't worthy of a meal. And you laughed." Ethan looked away, guilt flickering across his face. "Look, I know it was wrong. I was stupid, arrogant. But I need help now, Clara. I need someone I can trust." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You should have thought of that before teaching me how to survive without you." He left that night, without another word, but I knew it wasn't over. Men like Ethan didn't give up. They begged when pride failed them. And sure enough, a week later, his company officially went public with their troubles. Investors were pulling out, employees quitting, projects frozen. Meanwhile, Lily's table was thriving. We were featured in Good Morning City, and a major food magazine reached out to do a cover story on the woman who built hope from hunger. Hope. That was the word people used. But I knew better. It wasn't hope that built this. It was humiliation, repurposed into hunger, and hunger that finally learned how to feed itself. One night, after everyone had gone home, I sat at the same table where Ethan had begged for help. I took out my notebook, the one with plan written on the first page, and opened to the end. I wrote, "The seat they denied me will become the table they kneel at." I didn't know how yet, but I could feel it coming, the reckoning. The morning the magazine hit the stands, my cafe was busier than ever. People came in clutching glossy copies, smiling at the front cover, my face beneath the headline, "From Family Shame to Culinary Queen, How Clara Langford Baked Her Way to Redemption." Almost laughed when I read it. Redemption. What a pretty word for survival. The article spoke about my journey. The single mother who turned rejection into success, who refused to let humiliation define her. But what it didn't say, what I hadn't told anyone, was that every recipe on the menu was born from a wound. Each dish was named after a memory. I'd been forced to eat alone. The broken plate, a lemon tart with cracked glaze, sundown soup, a warm blend of comfort and grief, second chance bread, always made from leftover dough. It wasn't food I was serving anymore. It was truth, disguised in flavor. That evening, I received a message request from Ethan Langford. Subject: Congratulations. I opened it. You've made quite a name for yourself, Clara. I'm proud of you. Maybe it's time we sit down and talk about opportunities. We could help each other. The same man who once laughed as I was escorted out of his mansion now wanted a seat at my table. I didn't reply. Not yet, because part of revenge, real revenge, isn't what you say, it's what you make them see. 2 weeks later, I hosted a charity gala. It was for women in transition, a program I'd started for single mothers, building small businesses. The event was held in the grand ballroom of the old Langford estate, the very house my brother had lost to foreclosure. Yes, I'd bought it quietly through an auction under a different name. Now the chandeliers that once lit up my humiliation would glow for something pure, something mine. The night was beautiful. Guests mingled, laughter floated, champagne sparkled. I wore a silk gown in the same deep shade of crimson my mother loved, and when the evening reached its peak, I stepped up to the microphone. Thank you all for being here, I began. This event isn't just about charity. It's about reclamation. It's about finding light in the places we were once made to feel small. Applause followed. Then I smiled and said, before we end, I'd like to invite a special guest, someone who knows what it means to lose everything and start again. I turned toward the entrance. Ethan stood there, unsure whether to step forward or run. But the cameras had already found him. So he walked in, all eyes on the fallen king. When he reached me, I extended my hand. Everyone, I said, this is my brother, Ethan Langford, the man who once taught me what it meant to be excluded from a table. I thought tonight I'd return the favor by offering him a seat. Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan froze, caught between shame and pride. He leaned close and whispered, "What are you doing?" I smiled for the cameras. Just balancing the books. Later, as the crowd thinned and the music softened, we stood on the same marble floor where years ago he'd told me I didn't belong. "You bought the house," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "With money from the cafe you mocked." His voice broke slightly. "I lost everything, Clara. The company, the house. Even Samantha left." I looked at him then. Really looked. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a trembling kind of remorse. "Then maybe," I said softly, "you finally understand hunger." He met my gaze. "Is this what you wanted? To see me like this?" I shook my head. "No, Ethan, I didn't want you to fall. I just wanted you to know what it felt like to look up and see someone else rise." He left without another word. And for the first time, I didn't feel hatred, only release. Because revenge, I realized, isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. Reclaiming the pieces they thought they broke beyond repair. That night, as the ballroom lights dimmed, I stood beneath the grand chandelier. The same one that once hung over a dinner I was never allowed to finish. And I whispered, "We're finally home, Mom." A week after the gala, the headlines began to shift. What had once been the Langford Empire was now the Langford Collapse. Financial fraud, hidden debts, investors pulling out. Every secret Ethan had buried under luxury was spilling into daylight, and though I should have felt triumphant, I didn't. There was only a heavy silence inside me, like the moment after a storm, when you realize the thunder has stopped, but the damage remains. I had gotten what I wanted, justice, yet There was no joy in watching my brother drown in the same arrogance that once sank me. One afternoon, I found him sitting outside Lily's table. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but spiritually diminished. His tailored suit hung loose, his eyes hollow, his hands clasped like he was praying without knowing how. I paused before walking over. "Ethan." He glanced up. I didn't know where else to go. Part of me wanted to turn away, but another part, the part that still remembered being his little sister, couldn't. I sat beside him on the bench. He sighed. "They took the cars, the house, the accounts, everything. I can't even pay rent right now." His voice cracked. Samantha left. She said she never signed up for poverty. I looked at him quietly. "So now you know how it feels to be disposable." He nodded, shame flickering across his face. "I was cruel to you, Clara. I told myself it was just business, that you were a liability, that your life was a reminder of everything I wanted to forget. But I see now, you were the only one who ever really had integrity." His eyes glistened. "How did you do it? How did you survive us?" I turned toward the cafe window, where Lily was wiping tables inside, humming to herself. "Because I had someone worth surviving for," I said softly. A few minutes of silence passed between us, the kind that holds decades of words never spoken. Finally, I asked, "Why come here, Ethan?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I want to make things right. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can start again. Help somehow, even if it's small." I studied him. His worn suit, trembling hands, the weight of humility in his posture, and for the first time I believed him. But forgiveness wasn't a word you could just say. It had to be earned slowly through change. So I gave him a test. "There's a delivery shift tonight," I said. "Short-staffed. If you're serious, grab an apron." His brows rose, but he nodded. "Okay." And that's how the once golden Langford heir began his first night delivering pastries and cleaning counters under my roof. Some customers recognized him. Whispers rippled, phones came out, photos snapped, but he didn't flinch. He just worked, quietly, carefully, like a man learning to be human again. Weeks passed. He kept coming back. He never asked for special treatment, never complained, never tried to explain away the past. He just worked. And oddly, the staff started liking him. They said he was funny, humble, even kind. Sometimes I'd catch him helping Lily with her homework, showing her how to balance accounts on the register. Once, she looked up and said, "Uncle Ethan, you're really good at math." He froze at the word uncle, then smiled. "I used to be." One night, after closing, he approached me with an envelope. "I sold the last of my stocks," he said quietly. "It's not much, but I want to invest in Lily's table. I don't want repayment, just a chance to contribute." I hesitated, fingers brushing the envelope. "Ethan." He shook his head. "Please, let me give back something. You rebuilt your life, Clara. Let me at least try to rebuild my soul." And so, I took it, not for the money, but for the meaning. For the first time, his actions didn't come from pride, but repentance. A month later, Samantha showed up. She swept into the cafe in her designer coat, heels clicking like gunfire. Her smile was brittle. "Clara, congratulations on your success. Seems I underestimated you." I crossed my arms. "You usually did." She looked around the cafe. "Is Ethan here?" "He's in the back," I said. "Working?" She blinked. "Working? Yes. That's what people do when they've stopped pretending." Her smirk faltered. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Seeing us fall, I shook my head. "No, I'm just done being the meal you left out to spoil." When Ethan came out, she turned her charm back on. Soft voice, watery eyes. "Ethan, darling, I made a mistake. We can fix this. We just need to..." He cut her off. "No, Samantha, you need to fix yourself. Clara gave me something you never could. Truth. Samantha's expression hardened. You'll regret this. Ethan smiled faintly. Already did, years ago. And with that she left. For good. As the door swung shut behind her, I turned to him. He sighed deeply. Feels like closing a book. I nodded. Then maybe it's time we write a new one. He looked at me, eyes soft. Do you forgive me, Clara? I thought for a moment. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word, I said. But I don't hate you anymore. And maybe that's enough. He nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe it is. That night, as we cleaned up, Lily ran up holding 2 cupcakes. One for me, one for Ethan. Mom, Uncle Ethan, make a wish, she said. We blew out the candles together. I didn't wish for wealth, or revenge, or even peace. I wished for continuity. That fragile thread between pain and grace that keeps families from tearing completely apart. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the past came knocking again. Not metaphorically, but quite literally. The postman handed me a small weathered envelope. No return address, just my name, written in a hand I hadn't seen in years. My father's handwriting. I froze. My breath caught. He'd been gone for nearly a decade. The last time I saw him was through the car window the night he drove away, leaving behind the pieces of our broken home. I tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, and a smaller sealed document with my father's old business crest. The letter began, "To my daughter, Clara. If you're reading this, it means the truth has finally found its way home." I sank onto a chair, eyes blurring as I read on. He wrote about how after our mother died, Ethan had taken over the family company. But before that, before any of the money, before the prestige, my father had made a deal that destroyed everything. "I made your brother choose," he confessed. "After your mother passed, the company was collapsing. I told Ethan he could save it, but only if he distanced himself from you. Investors didn't want scandal, didn't want a struggling single mother associated with the Langford name. I forced him to cut ties to keep us afloat. He begged me not to, but I insisted. I felt my heart twist." He went on. "He obeyed me, Clara. He did it to protect the name, but he lost his soul doing it. You were the one he loved most. He never stopped sending support. I made sure you never knew." My hands shook as I opened the second document. A copy of the original Langford Trust. In it, half the estate was listed under my name, but it had never been transferred. My father had hidden it, postponed it, with the note, "Transfer to Clara when she's ready to build something of her own." The truth hit like a wave. I had already built it, from ashes, without any of their money, without even knowing it was meant to be mine. When Ethan arrived at the cafe later that afternoon, I was still holding the papers. He saw my face and froze. "Clara, what's wrong?" Wordlessly, I handed him the letter. He read it silently, eyes scanning line after line until his lips parted, his face crumbling. He sank into a chair, voice breaking. He made me do it. All those years I thought I was protecting our name. I was just carrying his guilt. Tears welled in my eyes. "You should have told me." "I couldn't," he whispered. "He said if I ever did, the company would be ruined, and that he'd cut me off too. I was a coward." I shook my head. "No, Ethan, you were trapped. For the first time in decades, we didn't talk as enemies or strangers, but as 2 survivors of the same family storm." "I used to dream about Mum's voice," I said quietly. "She always told me, 'Clara, kindness isn't weakness, it's endurance.' I think she knew one day we'd have to choose between vengeance and peace." Ethan nodded slowly. "So which will you choose now?" I looked at him. The brother who had once humiliated me, then humbled himself beside me. "I already chose, Ethan," I said. "I built my life on forgiveness, not fire." We decided to visit our father's grave that evening. Lily came with us, holding a small bunch of wildflowers. The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of wet grass. I knelt beside the headstone and placed the flowers down. For a long time, I whispered, "I thought you abandoned me, but maybe you were just lost too." Ethan stood beside me, silent. Then he said softly, "I wish we'd both known sooner." I turned to him. Maybe we weren't meant to. Maybe the lesson wasn't in the truth. It was in what we did without it. As we left, the sun broke through the clouds, a soft, golden light spilling across the path, like forgiveness made visible. I took Lily's hand, feeling something lift inside me. The last shard of bitterness finally dissolving. For the first time, I didn't feel haunted by my family's name. I felt free of it. That night, I went back to Lily's table and placed the letter in a frame behind the counter. Not as a token of guilt, but as a reminder that even the ugliest roots can grow into something beautiful if you tend them with care. And as I locked up, I whispered to the empty cafe, "The past doesn't own me anymore." The first anniversary of Lily's table arrived quietly. No grand speeches, no champagne toasts, just the soft hum of morning traffic outside, the smell of cinnamon and coffee, and sunlight spilling through the window like a blessing. I stood behind the counter, watching Lily frost cupcakes with steady little hands. She was humming, her hair tied up like mine used to be when I worked in someone else's kitchen. Except this kitchen was ours, and for the first time in my life, I felt something that wasn't survival. It was peace. A small crowd gathered as the day went on. Customers, neighbors, even a few old friends from the early market days. Ethan showed up too. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled, carrying a bouquet of lilies. The same flowers Mom loved. The same ones Lily was named after. "Thought we could mark the day," he said, smiling shyly. I nodded. "You remembered." "Hard not to," he replied. "You named your entire life after her." We both laughed softly. He had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced with something quieter. Humility, maybe even grace. He'd started managing a small local charity that helped jobless fathers get back on their feet. He said it was his way of making peace with the world he once ruled and ruined. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like fireworks. Sometimes, it looks like showing up quietly, day after day, until your soul learns a new rhythm. That afternoon, a familiar woman entered the cafe, Mrs. Keene, my old boss, now retired. She smiled, her eyes crinkling. "I told you not to waste your talent under my sign, remember?" I grinned. "You did, and I listened." She looked around at the bustling cafe, the laughter, the warmth, the framed letter behind the counter, and said softly, "You didn't just build a bakery. Clara, you built a home." Before closing time, Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can we do something special for Grandma tonight? You know, to say thank you." My throat tightened. "What do you have in mind?" She held up a cupcake with a small sugar heart on top. "I made one for her, and one for you." She placed them on the counter side by side. One labeled Mom, the other Daughter, and in that small sugary gesture, every ache I'd ever carried, every humiliation, every lonely night, every harsh word, melted away, because this was the legacy that truly mattered. Not money, not revenge, not power, but continuity, the kind that heals generations. Later, after we closed, Ethan helped me clean up. He paused by the framed letter. "You ever think he'd be proud of you?" he asked. I looked at it for a long moment. "I don't know," I said, "but I think Mom would be, and that's enough." He smiled softly. "You turned pain into something edible, Clara. That's alchemy." I chuckled. "More like survival with frosting." We stepped outside into the quiet night. The air was cool, the city glowing around us. Lily ran ahead, her laughter echoing down the street. The sound of a new generation untouched by the weight of old mistakes. And as I watched her twirl beneath the lamplight, I realized something simple, something true. Revenge had never been the ending. Healing was. I turned to Ethan. "You know," I said, "maybe the best tables aren't the ones we're invited to. They're the ones we build ourselves. And leave an extra seat for whoever needs to find their way home." He nodded, eyes wet. "Then this time, save me a seat." I smiled. Always. That night, before bed, I wrote one last note in my old worn notebook. The same one I'd used years ago, when I first scribbled my dreams in desperation. I am no longer the girl who was turned away. I am the woman who built her own table and filled it with love. As I closed the notebook, I whispered to the dark, "We made it, Mom. We really did." And for once, the silence that answered back wasn't empty. It was full of warmth, full of everything I'd lost and found again. If you've ever been made to feel small, remember this. You don't need their approval to belong. Build your own table, feed your own heart, and when they come knocking, smile and serve them a taste of peace. That's all for today, folks. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!